Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. My ex's wife grabbed me in the dairy aisle. Her arms locked around my shoulders like we were close friends. My chest hit her, my basket swung hard against my leg. For a second I thought she had the wrong person. Then she whispered in my ear, low and shaky. "Thank you for ruining everything. I am Nora 31 and I swear time stalled." My hands floated in the air, useless and stiff. I pulled back just enough to see her face. I knew that face from screenshots and tagged photos. Jake's wife stared at me like she finally found something. "Hi," she said, and her smile twitched at the edges. Her fingers stayed on my arms longer than felt normal. "Wow, I thought this would be way more awkward." She laughed once, short and uneven, then stopped too fast. My skin crawled because I had no script for this. You know that feeling when your brain starts lying instantly? I wanted to pretend I did not know her. To say wrong person, I think you mixed me up. But her eyes flicked to my cart, then to me. She knew exactly which disaster she was hugging in public. "You're Nora, right?" She did not even raise her voice. She did not need to, my name hit hard enough. I swallowed once and tried to sound normal and bored. "Yeah, that's me, what's going on?" She looked almost relieved, like I handed her permission. "I'm Emma," she said, and I already knew that. I had zoomed in on her profile picture too often. Now she stood 3 feet away, very real, very steady. "That Emma," she added, and my stomach clenched on cue. I checked around us, stupid instinct, like I had secrets. No one cared, people just moved carts and grabbed milk. Still, my throat went dry because this felt like punishment. Jake's wife right in front of me, right in my space. Part of me wanted him to appear and drag her away. "He's not here," she said, and I froze on the spot. Her mouth twitched again, this time more like an apology. "I came alone, I didn't tell him about this." The way she said this told me she planned it carefully. That detail made everything feel suddenly more dangerous. I laughed, the wrong kind of laugh, tight and thin. "What are we doing here, Emma?" My voice sounded lighter than I felt inside. Inside I was already replaying every ugly thing I did. There was nowhere to run that did not pass by her. "I wanted to see you," she answered, fingers on the cart. Not gentle, not aggressive, just holding herself in place. "I've wanted to for a while, honestly." She took a breath, like she braced for pushback or tears. I felt my heartbeat in my ears, waiting for the hit. I expected insults or maybe a slap, something direct. She watched my face closely, like she studied reactions for work. "I know who you are to Jake," she continued slowly. "I know what happened, I know what you did." She paused, and my body reacted before my brain caught up. My shoulders went tight and my jaw locked without permission. When someone says they know what you did, you feel it. You feel every lie, every late night, every half confession. I gripped the cart handle until my fingers started to ache. I wished I could shrink right there between the fridges. "If you came to yell, you can just do it." The words jumped out faster than I planned to speak. I hated how defensive I sounded, like I was ready. Ready for judgment, ready for the words I still repeat. "Or you can text me, I guess, whatever works." She shook her head once, sharp, like that idea offended her. "No, I didn't hunt you down to scream in public." The phrase "hunt you down" made my spine go cold. So she admitted it, she looked for me, this was deliberate. That was somehow worse than an accidental run-in. She glanced at my hands, then at my face again. "Jake told me about you, all of it eventually." That little word sat heavy because it meant resistance first. He needed time before saying my name in their home. Hearing that stung more than I wanted to admit. My mouth formed the start of an excuse, then gave up. There is no neat explanation for cheating on someone trusting. Every version sounds like you're selling a used car. So I just stood there, hearing my pulse, hating the silence. Waiting for her to deliver whatever she came to drop. "I'm not here to make you feel worse," she tried. The way her eyes flicked away said she knew I doubted that. "I think you already carry enough, I can see it." Her voice softened, and that softness hit harder than judgment. I felt my shoulders sag because kindness felt undeserved here. She leaned closer, not whispering this time, just low and clear. "You blew his life apart, you know that already." The words landed like a fact, not a weapon, weirdly. "You also pushed him into becoming the man I married." I stared at her because my brain refused that math. I wanted to argue right away, to reject that twist. To say no, I did damage, that is where it ends. Easy story, I am the villain, you are the upgrade. Bay. She looked too calm for a simple revenge speech. Something in her posture told me she rehearsed this carefully. Emma, what do you actually want from me? I hated how small my voice sounded against the refrigerators. She let the question hang, studying me like a puzzle. Then she smiled, quick and almost nervous, and dropped it. I wanted to say thank you, and I knew that would sound insane. My fingers slipped on the cart handle, sweat and shock mixing. Thank you was the last phrase I expected from her. Thank you belonged to babysitters and baristas, not home wreckers. I stared at her left hand, at the band on her finger. That ring glinted like proof that my disaster became their start. Can we step outside for a second? She nodded toward the doors, already turning her cart. I don't want to have this conversation next to yogurt. The line would have been funny if my stomach worked. I followed her because not knowing felt worse than staying. Every step toward the exit felt like walking into court. Automatic doors opened, cold air hit, my skin prickled hard. I could have bailaid right there, claimed groceries and schedule. Instead I stayed because once you ruin someone, curiosity sticks. I needed to hear why the woman he chose thanked me. Emma pushed the cart toward the parking lot and did not look back. I followed like a pulled dog on a leash that I deserved. My legs felt shaky, and I hated that she could see that. We stopped near the concrete barrier where people dump carts when they rush. She spun the cart away and blocked it with her hip. Then she faced me fully and folded her arms like she braced. Relax, she said, which somehow did the exact opposite inside me. It's not an ambush, I just need to get this out. My first instinct was to bail and pretend I never heard that. Walk to my car, leave the food, block her number later. You know that twitch in your chest when you stand too close to a cliff? That was me, except the drop was every choice I made with her husband. If this is about him, I already know I'm trash. The words slipped out before I could hide behind something calmer. I sounded harsher than I meant to, more bitter than sad. She watched me, not offended, like she expected that defense move. It is about him, she nodded once and kept her gaze steady. But it's also about me, and I'm the one standing here. She shifted her weight like she tried to find a stable position. This is going to sound twisted, I practiced it in my head. She took a breath and checked my face like she measured impact. I wanted to tell you face to face that I'm grateful. My brain glitched again because that word did not fit our situation. Grateful belonged in holiday cards, not in a conversation with the ex who detonated everything. You're what? It came out flat and thin and almost funny to my own ears. If there was a hidden camera, this would be the punchline moment. She did not laugh, which made the whole thing feel even stranger. I know what you did with him, her fingers tapped her arm once. I know it was not a one-time thing or some stupid accident. My shoulders lifted like I wanted to shield my throat from the statement. One night is panic, what you did had planning, that's different. Hearing her draw that line between accident and plan made my chest tight. She was right, and I hated that she understood the pattern so well. I stared at a cracked line in the pavement just to not cry. Why do you think I need to hear your thanks for that? Because it changed who he is now, she answered without flinching. And that version of him is the one I could actually marry. She rubbed at her wrist like she tried to wipe something old away. If you had not burned that bridge, he never would have left it. I know, dramatic line, but she dropped it like a simple fact. Part of me wanted to argue with her logic just to stay alive. Another part, the quieter one, knew there was probably some ugly truth there. I could feel my throat throb while I waited for more damage. You know how he used to be in relationships. She watched me carefully here, checking if I would interrupt or bolt. I gave the smallest shrug because yes, I knew that too well. He would bend until he snapped and never say what bothered him. He would overgive, she continued, hands drawing a small circle in air. He would guess what his partner wanted and swallow his own needs completely. She let that hang there and I felt my stomach twist in recognition. You took advantage of that version, even if you were not fully aware. There it was, the accusation dressed like analysis, and it stung more. I wanted to scream that I was not a predator hunting him on purpose. That I was just scared and messy and selfish, not some heartless monster. Instead, I inhaled hard and bit the inside of my cheek until it hurt. You think I don't replay that already? My voice sounded rougher and a little igger than normal. I live with the fact that I broke someone who trusted me. I hated how close my eyes were to spilling over outside a grocery entrance. I'm not trying to dump more guilt on you, her shoulders dropped slightly. I'm telling you how that explosion forced him to finally fix himself. She leaned back against the cart and let her hands rest on the handle. He almost lost his mind after you, but he did not stay there. That detail punched through my self-centered version of the story. I always pictured him just walking away and never looking behind again. The idea that he actually spiraled made my ribs feel too tight. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions and also none at all. What do you mean almost lost his mind? The words left me before I could decide if I deserved to know. She exhaled through her nose and looked off toward the parked cars. He stopped sleeping, stopped eating right, started blaming himself for your cheating. That last part hit like a slap because I knew he did not deserve that. He thought if he had just been more fun you would stay. She lifted her hand and then let it fall again, like the memory weighed something. He thought if he worked harder or joked more you would not wander. I felt my knees weaken and I had to shift my stance. I had never pictured him twisting things that way. I assumed pure anger. Rage is easier to accept than someone quietly thinking they are not enough. My chest burned with a cocktail of shame and something close to grief. So where does thankful even come into this disaster? I sounded almost mocking, and I hated that tone in hindsight. Her mouth tightened for a second, then loosened like she chose not to react. Because that crash finally pushed him into real help instead of denial. He booked a therapist after waking up shaking 3 nights in a row. She lifted 3 fingers like she counted those nights too. He talked about how he never spoke up when something bothered him. She tapped her temple once, then her chest like she drew a straight line. I knew I had caused so much of that, yet hearing it spelled out still rocked me. He started realizing he ignored his own gut when he felt disrespected. Her voice dropped a little lower on that word and my skin prickled. He saw the signs with you and still kept hoping you would magically change. I almost snapped back that I am not just a list of warning signs. Then I remembered how many opportunities I had to stop and never did. That quiet awareness sat heavier than any insult she could throw. I wrapped my arms around myself and stayed there because I deserved to feel exposed. After a lot of work, she went on, and this time there was warmth. He learned to call out stuff right away instead of stuffing it down. She looked directly at me again, and there was no hatred in her eyes. He learned where his limits were and what he actually wanted from a partner. And yeah, she added, a crooked smile touching her mouth for a second. He always brings up that he never wants to repeat your story with anyone. The word "you" sat there like a brand on my forehead. That vow is part of the reason we work now, whether we like it or not. I did not know what to do with that strange compliment wrapped in a scar. My heart hurt for him and also for the version of me who blew it. At the same time, there was this small twisted relief that he got stronger. I hate that I needed his growth to feel like something almost useful came from my worst behavior. You could have lived your life without ever telling me this. I tried to read her face for any sign of victory or satisfaction. If you are happy now, why drag me out of the milk aisle? The question came out harsher than planned, but I did not pull it back. Because ignoring you would keep you as a shadow instead of a person. She rubbed her thumb across her palm like she scraped off nerves. And I needed you to know that you are not just the villain in some pure fairy tale. She tilted her head a little, weighing her next words carefully. You hurt him badly, and I will never pretend otherwise. She lifted her hand between us like a barrier and a bridge together. But that hurt forced him to grow in a way no gentle conversation could. She dropped her hand and the air between us felt charged and uneasy. I thought of every night I lay awake replaying my worst day with him. In my version, I was this catastrophic storm that only destroyed things. In hers, I was still destructive, but the aftermath looked different. I did not know which version felt worse, the pure villain or the accidental architect. Look, she said, and this time her voice softened without losing its edge. You do not get a redemption arc from me, that is between you and you. Her gaze stayed steady, and that made the words land deeper. But I am standing in a life I love now, and it exists partly because you blew up the old one. My throat tig. H10 again, and this time I did not hide it. I blinked hard and one tear slipped out anyway, annoying and hot. I wiped it away fast, almost angry at my own face for betraying me. She noticed, of course, and something in her expression gentled even more. I'm not asking you to feel good about it, she added quietly. I just needed you to hear that his story did not end on your worst night. That sentence hit me harder than anything else she shared. For years in my head it basically did end there with that door closing. Cars moved behind us, carts clanged, the world kept going like nothing happened. Inside me though, something cracked open, not in a romantic way, just real. I had built this narrative where I was poison and he was my biggest casualty. Now I stood here listening to the woman wearing his ring tell me his life actually expanded after the blast. I still felt sick over what I did, that did not vanish. I still wished I could rewind and slap the younger me away from every wrong choice. But another thought slipped in, quiet and unsettling and impossible to unhear. Maybe I was not only the wrecking ball, maybe I was also the reason he never tolerates someone like me again. Emma's phone vibrated between us and lit up with his name. Her eyes dropped to the screen, then flicked back to mine. For a heartbeat I thought she might hand it over. Instead she hit the side button and the sound died. You're ignoring him for this. My voice came out rougher than I wanted, almost accusing. She kept the phone in her palm, fingers tense around it. If he knew where I am right now, he'd lose it. The idea of Jake furious in a parking space because of me twisted my stomach. I pictured him at home assuming she was running an errand. Meanwhile, his wife stood outside a supermarket with the woman who nuked his trust. I honestly could not decide if I felt sick or weirdly deserving. You can go, I muttered, and my hand twitched toward the doors. You did your moral talk, you made your point, we're done. Part of me hoped she would accept the exit and walk away. Instead, she set the phone in the child's seat and reached into her bag. I brought something, she said, voice quieter now, not softer. Her fingers dug around until she pulled out a folded sheet. My pulse jumped because I already knew who that handwriting belonged to. Even from a distance, my body recognized the shape of those letters. I promised I'd never send this, she murmured, thumb brushing the edge. Not to you, not to anyone, he wrote it for himself. She looked up at me, jaw tight, like she fought with herself. I changed my mind because you're stuck in a version that isn't real anymore. I did not want to step closer, but my feet shifted anyway. She held the page out, arms steady, eyes watching every millimeter. My hand shook as I took it, paper light and heavy together. Why do you even have this on you? I asked, voice thin. Because I knew I'd chicken out without proof. Her arms folded again, a barrier across her chest. You can rip it after, you can throw it away on the spot. She nodded at the page, just read the middle part. The top started with my name, so I skipped down like she said. My eyes landed on one line and everything in me went tight. I keep checking the door like she'll walk in and swear it was a mistake. My fingers pressed into the crease until they hurt, like that would change the words. Another line dragged my attention lower before I could stop myself. I'm angry, but I miss her, and I hate that both can exist. My vision blurred for a second and the text doubled. I blinked hard because crying all over his old pain felt pathetic. I forced myself to read one more section just above the signature. If this is what love looks like with no boundaries, I don't want it back. That last part sliced deeper than the rest because it sounded clear. He was still in pieces and somehow already sure he should not return. I folded the paper along the line of his name and stared at my knuckles. I didn't know he wrote anything like this, I managed, barely louder than air. Honestly, I always imagined him just deleting me out of his mind. Seeing his confusion in ink punched a hole through that comfortable fantasy. Emma watched me for a beat, then leaned her shoulder against the metal rail. He read that out loud to his therapist a few months later. Her mouth pulled into a small, uneasy smirk. Apparently that was a big session. I hated that I wanted details about a room I never stepped into. He told her he felt stupid for missing you that much, she went on. Told her he wasn't sure where anger ended and attachment started. She drew an invisible line between us with her index finger. This, right here, is the moment he decided he'd never accept that kind of uncertainty again. I stared at the folded paper like it might bite me. All this time I thought he just flipped a switch and moved on. The words tasted childish as they left my mouth. Emma's brows rose, like she had not considered my side of that story. You really believed he just woke up and stopped caring? It was not said mocking, more stunned, almost sad. I gave a stiff shrug because owning that felt embarrassing. I had to believe something, and that version hurt in a cleaner way. She nodded slowly, processing that, thumb rubbing against her palm. That's the problem, she said, eyes back on the page. You've been living inside a simplified version where you're the cartoon villain. Her gaze came up and pinned me. That lets you dodge the complicated parts. That stung more than I wanted to admit because she was not wrong. It was easier to call myself garbage than to study each step. Easier to think I poisoned him once and that was it. Harder to accept I warped his whole idea of love and he still cared. You think I'm dodging? I asked, fingers tightening around the fold. A bitter laugh slipped out before I could stop it. I'm out here listening to his wife tell me I helped somehow. My chest felt crowded, like every emotion had shown up at once. Emma pushed off the rail and stepped closer, close enough that I smelled coffee on her breath. You're owning the damage, I can see that, I'm not blind. Her eyes softened for a breath, then sharpened again. I'm talking about the part where you refuse to see that he changed because of it. I know he changed, I snapped, frustration spilling out fast. He's married and functional and apparently full of boundaries now. I waved the letter slightly, paper fluttering between us. I'm the one still dragging this around, not him. That's exactly it, she answered, voice low but steady now. He built something new from what happened, you just built a cage. She tapped the folded sheet with one fingertip, light but precise. This could be a mirror or a weapon, depending on what you decide to do with it. I hate when someone drops a line that sounds like it belongs in a movie. I wanted to roll my eyes and walk back into fluorescent safety. Instead, I felt that sentence lodge somewhere in my chest. A mirror or a weapon, and I knew which one I usually chose. Why are you doing this for me? I asked, finally voicing the part that nagged. You won, if we're using that gross competition language. The word tasted cheap and wrong, but that is how my brain framed it. You got the relationship, the ring, the better version. She flinched at one and shook her head once. This was never a game to me, her jaw worked as she spoke. I'm not here to gloat, I'm here because I don't like ghosts. She took a step back, like the weight between us needed space. For him, you exist as a chapter he finished, she continued. For you, he's still this open tab playing on repeat. Her eyes flicked to my hands gripping the letter. I don't want our life built on some endless haunting for you. That sounds very noble, I muttered, and even I heard the sarcasm. She smiled without humor, just a brief twitch at the corner of her mouth. It's not noble, it's selfish in a different way. She took a slow breath. I want him free, and part of that means you stop hanging in the doorway. That landed heavier than the whole gratitude speech. I pictured myself stuck between frames, always half-turned toward that old apartment. Not walking back in, not fully leaving, just hovering. It was ugly and accurate, and I had no clever comeback. You think one letter fixes that? I asked, lifting the page slightly. My tone came out tired instead of sharp this time. She glanced at the crease, then at my face again. No, I think one hard truth might shove you in a different direction. Her phone buzzed again, screen lighting up, same contact flashing. She looked at it, then at me, weighing something in real time. If I answer, this gets messy fast, she murmured. If I don't, he'll worry and connect dots I'm not ready for. I swallowed, throat raw, mind racing through possible futures. You're risking your calm evening for this weird closure mission. It came out half question, half accusation because I still could not believe it. She locked the phone, slipped it into her pocket, and looked straight at me. I'm risking an uncomfortable conversation at home, she corrected. which is nothing compared to what he already survived. She nodded at the page once more. You hearing his words is worth one tense night for me. That answer hit me in a place I did not know was still reachable. I stared at the folded sheet and felt the old narrative wobble. For years I carried this picture where I destroyed him and then vanished. Now I held proof that he crawled through the mess and did something with it. What I did with that knowledge would say more about me than the cheating ever did. I creased the page again and shoved it back toward her. Take it, I said, fingers still locked on the edge. If he wanted me to see this, he'd hand it over himself. My hand fought me because part of me wanted to keep it. That tug alone told me how deep I was still stuck. She did not grab it right away, just watched my grip. You sure? Her brow lifted a little, testing my resolve. If you walk off with that, you can reread it forever. My thumb rubbed the fold until the paper went soft. I already reread my version every night, I muttered, throat tight. I don't need fresh material to torture myself with. I pushed the sheet into her palm before I chickened out. Letting go felt like releasing a rope over a drop. She slid the page back into her bag, careful and slow. You're braver than you think, you know that. I snorted, that ugly half-laugh people do when they are offended and flattered. If this is courage, I'd hate to see cowardice in your book. Her gaze sharpened suddenly, like she switched lanes in her head. Do you still want him? She asked, no build-up, no mercy. The question slammed into me harder than anything she had shared. I felt my shoulders rise like my body tried to hide. I could have lied, tossed out some clean, noble answer. You know that instinct, where you reach for the line that sounds mature. I don't know, I admitted instead, and my voice scraped. Some days I miss him, some days I miss who I thought I was with him. Her jaw tightened, and for the first time I saw real fear. That's what I needed to hear out loud, she breathed, eyes on my face. Because I've been guessing from screenshots and silence for years. She looked almost relieved and panicked at the same time. I haven't messaged him, I added quickly like I could earn points. She tilted her head, waiting, not buying the half-truth. I chewed my lip once, then forced the rest out. I just check things sometimes more often than I should. His accounts, her mouth curled around the words like sour candy. My friends' posts, his work stuff, anything with his name attached. I nodded once because there was no point pretending now. Shame burned up my neck, hot and obvious, impossible to hide. She rubbed her forehead with the heel of her hand, frustrated. Okay, so you're not chasing him, but you are orbiting constantly. She dropped her hand and fixed me with a direct stare. That still keeps him living rent-free in your chest. I hated how accurate that sounded, because it was exactly that. Congratulations, I muttered, you just explained my last few years in one sentence. My fingers found the railing behind me and dug in hard. It grounded me and trapped me in the conversation at the same time. Her phone buzzed again, longer this time, insistent. She pulled it out, glanced at the display and exhaled. I need to pick this up, she murmured, thumb hovering over accept. Please don't talk for a second, she added, eyes flicking up. She turned slightly, shoulders angling away, then answered. Hey, her tone went instantly lighter, practiced casual like a switch flipped. Yeah, I'm still out, lines are insane today. She listened, nodding, while I stared at the side of her face. Babe, really, it's fine, I'm almost done. Her knuckles whitened around the phone while she insisted. No, you don't have to drive over here. My heartbeat spiked at that, sharp and fast with one thought. He wants to come. I stared at the entrance doors, suddenly convinced he would appear. I could picture him scanning the crowd, spotting us instantly. The idea of his eyes landing on me in this scene made my stomach flip. Part of me wanted it, which made me hate myself more. I promise I'll be home soon, she hurried, voice a little higher now. Yeah, love you, me too. Her shoulders dropped when the call ended. She slid the phone away, then let out a low curse. He almost got in the car, she muttered, more to herself than to me. So this might blow up on both of us tonight, I said. My laugh sounded brittle, like glass that had already cracked. If he shows up and sees us, I don't even know what he does. I did know one thing though, I was not ready for that expression. If he pulls in, I'll walk you out the back, she answered quickly. The speed told me she had pictured that scenario too. I won't blindside him with this, that would be cruel. Her jaw clenched for a beat, this mess is my choice, not his. That threw me because in my head he made all the choices now. You think he couldn't handle it? I asked, genuinely curious. Or maybe I just wanted any angle that let me imagine his reaction. This is where my brain goes, even now, straight back to him. He'd handle it, she replied, shoulders squaring again. He's strong now, grounded, he'd lay down boundaries fast. Her eyes met mine, steady, unwavering. I just don't want to test how much recovery can take in one night. I get that, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Because even if he could stand here and talk calmly, why should he? He already got his heart shattered once by me in another place. He did not need a surprise sequel in a store parking zone. Emma took a breath, then stuck out her hand suddenly. Give me your phone, she said, tone leaving no room for argument. My spine stiffened automatically, teenage reflex kicking in. Why? I asked, stupid question I already knew why. Because you keep peeking at his life and that keeps you frozen, she answered. And I'm not walking away just so you can stalk from a distance later. Her palm stayed open between us, unwavering. This meeting only means something if something actually changes. I could have refused, walked off, called her controlling. Instead, I unlocked my screen and placed it in her hand. It felt like handing over a bottle to someone after you swear you will quit. My stomach twisted while she scrolled, quick and precise. Is this his profile? She asked, tilting the display. The sight of his face, even in miniature, jolted me. Yeah, I whispered, the words scraping out of my throat. She tapped, then held the phone so I could see. Unfollow, she said, thumb hovering over the option. You do it, not me. I swallowed, then pressed the screen just once, small movement, big impact. My chest actually hurt, like something physical ripped. Now mute his name, she continued, still in that firm, calm tone. She guided my fingers through settings I already knew by heart. Search, filters, notifications, all the little hooks I had set. With each toggle, another thread between us snapped. Group chats, she added, eyes narrowing at a list of conversations. Oh, you really kept a whole archive alive here. My face burned hotter than the cold air around us. We removed his name from places I had hidden it like a stash. When she finally handed my phone back, my hands trembled. The screen looked the same, yet quieter, emptier, unfamiliar. I felt exposed, like she had just watched me undress a wound. Happy? I asked, more defensive than I wanted to sound. She leaned back against the metal rail again, thoughtful. This isn't about me being satisfied, she said slowly. This is about you not spending another 3 years watching from the bushes. The image hit home because that was exactly how it felt. You seem very invested in my healing journey, I muttered. The sarcasm was weak even to my own ears. If I get better, does that help your marriage sleep at night? It came out harsher than planned, resentment clawing for a target. She did not flinch, but something in her eyes shifted. Honestly, she answered, voice low, yeah, kind of. She shrugged one shoulder, small, almost tired. A version of you who moves on is a lot less likely to blow his world apart again. That sentence sliced through every layer of pretending I was harmless now. I wanted to argue that I would never touch his life again. Then I remembered how I had clung to his updates with white knuckles. My intentions and my impulses were not always sitting on the same side. I'm not proud of who I was with him, I admitted. The admission felt like dropping stones out of my pockets. And I don't trust myself as much as you think I should. My eyes met hers, so you're not wrong to worry. She studied my face, something like respect mixing with caution. You're more honest than I expected when I walked up to you, she said. I thought you'd deny everything and call him dramatic. Her mouth quirked slightly, that would have been easier to hate. So I disappointed you today, I tried to joke, weak attempt at levity. She huffed out a short breath, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. Yeah, she answered, you're inconveniently human, congrats. The word human landed heavier than any insult we had tossed around. For a moment we just stood there, strangers sharing one messy intersection. Cars rolled past, people walked by with bags, life doing its thing. Inside that bubble, though, it felt like a very specific courtroom. No judge, no jury, just the two of us and one missing man. Out of nowhere she dug into her bag again and pulled out a small card. She turned it between her fingers, then offered it to me. My counselor, she said, eyes on my face instead of the print. Not his, mine, someone who is not afraid to dig. I stared at the card without taking it. You want me to go talk to your therapist? I asked, incredulous. That's a level of entanglement I did not have on my bingo card. The idea weirded me out and intrigued me in equal measure. I want you to talk to someone who isn't me and isn't him, she replied. If you call, great, if you don't, I won't chase you. She held the card steady between two fingers, patient. I just know what it's like to drown in guilt alone. That last line slipped under all my defenses. Because she wasn't talking about my mistakes there, she was talking about hers. Keeping this meeting from him, hiding his writing. Bending rules. She carried her own load, even if it looked cleaner than mine. I took the card and slid it into my pocket, almost on autopilot. It rested right against my leg, small and sharp like a tiny ultimatum. I'm not promising anything, I muttered, needing that bit of control. I'm just promising I heard you. That's enough for today, she nodded, finally pushing off the rail. Her eyes flicked toward the store entrance like she checked for a familiar silhouette. He'll be home soon, and I need to beat him there. Her voice carried both urgency and something close to dread. I followed her gaze, half expecting to spot him walking through automatic doors. No sign of him, just strangers and carts and bags. Still, my pulse sped up like he might appear any second. The possibility alone kept my feet glued to the concrete. If he ever finds out about this, I'll handle it, she said. You won't get dragged into that fallout, I'll take the heat. She straightened her shoulders like she was already bracing for that argument. That's part of choosing to stand here with you today. I believed her, which surprised me more than anything else that afternoon. Not because she owed me coverage, but because she had nothing to gain. Her life was already built, mine was the one still under reconstruction. Yet she was the one stepping between me and future crossfire. Emma, I started, not even sure what I wanted to ask. She looked back, waiting, eyes tired and steady. If he does hear about this one day, don't tell him I kept watching. The words tasted bitter but necessary. You're asking me to protect his image of your downfall, she said. There was no mockery, just dry truth. Fine, I can live with him thinking you let go sooner than you did. She held my gaze, used that borrowed dignity for something useful. She reached for the cart she had abandoned earlier and started toward the entrance. I stayed where I was, heart thudding, card burning in my pocket. I could walk back inside and pretend this was a weird dream. Or I could go home and act like I actually believed him capable of a future without my shadow. She paused halfway to the doors and looked over her shoulder once more. Last thing, she called, voice carrying across the concrete. Please don't make this the highlight of your week, let it be the turning point instead. Then she disappeared into sliding glass and fluorescent noise, leaving me with a choice that would follow me home. I drove home on autopilot and nearly rolled through a red light. My hands were on the wheel, but the scene in front of the store kept replaying. Emma's last sentence bounced around my skull like a trapped fly. Do not make this the highlight of your week. I hated how quickly my brain tried to do exactly that. At the next stop, I yanked the visor down and stared at myself. Eyes rimmed, jaw clenched, lips pressed together like I was holding in words. You look wrecked, I muttered, and hearing my own voice jolted me. For a second, I thought about turning back and pretending today never happened. Instead, I pulled into my usual spot way too fast and slammed the brake. The silence inside the car felt loud and crowded at the same time. I sat there with the engine off and fingers still gripping the wheel. Either I moved now or I would sit frozen until dark. I finally dragged myself out and dug the little card from my pocket. Her counselor's name stared up at me in neat letters that felt too calm. I balanced it on my palm like it might fall through my skin. Every part of me screamed to stuff it in a drawer and forget it. I walked upstairs, dropped my keys on the counter and set the card down. Then I grabbed my phone before my courage leaked out completely. My thumb went to the search bar out of pure habit. For the first time in years, his name did nothing. No shortcuts, no recent taps, no suggested handle popped up. Just an empty field waiting for new obsessions I did not want. The silence from the app felt almost as loud as his old updates. Emma had ripped out more routes than I realized in that parking maze. I tried going in sideways through a friend's page I used to check. Nothing there either, filters cleared, notifications trimmed, pathways cut. Annoyance flared first, hot and childish, like someone took my favorite toy. Then underneath it something quieter, closer to actual grief. Without the constant drip of his life, the room felt different. It was just me, my phone, that card, and way too many thoughts. I opened a blank note and started typing his name before I could stop. The words poured out like water from a cracked pipe. I saw your letter. I ran into her. I'm sorry in ways I don't know how to explain. I kept going, fingers flying, eyes burning, heart pounding in my throat. I pretended you moved on in one clean step, and that helped me hide. I know now that you crawled through hell I built and still stood up. By the time I said the paragraph filled the whole screen. Reading it back felt like touching a bruise on purpose. Every line sounded like a plea, even the honest ones. The last thing he needed was another selfish upgrade of my guilt. I watched my thumb hover over the share button and hated myself. This was the exact moment Emma had warned me about without naming it. Making this strange encounter into my big emotional project. I stared at the unsent confession and could almost hear her voice. Use that borrowed dignity for something useful. My thumb moved not to send but to select everything. One swipe, the whole mess turned blue, ready to vanish. I hesitated long enough for my chest to start aching again. Then I hit delete and the screen jumped back to white. I tossed the phone onto the couch like it burned my hand. For a second I stood there, breathing hard, feeling oddly hollow. I had chosen not to drag him into my storm again. It felt righteous for about 3 seconds, then the fear crept in. If I was not writing to him, I had to do something else. Something that did not involve stalking or imaginary arguments or self-pity. My gaze landed on the card still sitting where I left it. My stomach flipped like I had just spotted an exam I had skipped. I picked it up and flipped it over, looking for excuses. No slogan, no comforting message, just a number and a name. I punched the digits into my phone and hovered over call. My thumb shook so much I almost hit speaker by accident. I pressed dial and held the phone to my ear before I could bail. 2 rings, 3, each one stretching longer than it actually was. On the 4th I panicked and jabbed end like a coward. The quiet that followed felt worse than any awkward conversation. Come on, I whispered, angry at myself now more than anyone else. Either I kept living in this loop or I did something real. I hit call again, this time forcing my arm to stay up. If someone answered, I would at least say hello before hanging up. A calm voice picked up on the second ring. Counseling office, this is Maria. I almost hung up anyway, my throat closing around every word. Instead I stepped back until my spine met the wall and forced air in. Hi, I managed, sounding younger than I liked. I got this number from a client of yours. My hand went to my hair, tugging at a strand while I talked. I'm trying to stop ruining the same story on repeat. There was a tiny pause, then a gentle hum. Are you looking to set up an appointment? No questions about who referred me, no demand for explanations. Something in that simple sentence loosened my shoulders a little. Yeah, I answered, the word coming out on a long exhale. I probably should have done this years ago, honestly. The honesty surprised me, because I expected to lie here too. Instead, the truth felt easier than that old defensive script. She went into schedule options, clearly used to nervous voices. Do mornings or afternoons work better for you? I checked my calendar with shaking fingers, eyes not really focusing. Late afternoon, I said, I'm better at talking after surviving the day. We settled on a date a little over a week out. She took my details like this was the most normal call on earth. Anything specific you like to focus on when we meet? I almost laughed, there were so many places to start. I need to understand why I blew up someone who trusted me, I said. And why I can't stop standing in the wreckage long after he left. Silence hummed for a beat, not uncomfortable, just full. Then she spoke again, calm and direct, no sugar. That's a very clear starting point. Her tone was professional and grounded, no shock, no judgment. I'm glad you reached out instead of staying stuck alone. Those words hit somewhere Emma's hadn't reached, because this woman knew nothing about us. After we hung up, I slid down the wall to the floor. Knees bent, arms around them, phone resting face down beside me. I felt like I had just walked out of a long confession booth. Only this time there was no absolution, just a date on a screen. I kept thinking about timing, about how close Jake came to driving over. One different turn, one more push on that call, and he might have appeared. The three of us in that parking strip, with no warning, no preparation. I honestly do not know if I would have survived that version of today. Instead, it was just me and his wife and a number in my phone. She went back to her evening, to her plan, to him. I sat on my floor staring at nothing, holding onto one fragile promise. That the next time his name came up in my head, it would not be my only story. I wish I could say that call fixed my behavior overnight. It did not. I still opened apps and reached for patterns without thinking. But every time my thumb twitched toward search, I heard Emma again. Please don't make this the highlight of your week. So I started doing something new, tiny and awkward. When I caught myself reaching toward his world, I reached for the notebook instead. I wrote down the urge, the trigger, the excuse like a petty inventory. It felt ridiculous and childish, but it also slowed me down. One entry stood out from that first night. Thought about checking his profile because I felt lonely after finishing a show. Not because I love him, not because of fate, because I was bored and sad. Seeing it written out like that made the whole thing less romantic and more pathetic. That hurt my pride, but in a helpful way. The story in my head had always been epic heartbreak. On paper, it looked more like addiction and avoidance dressed up as grand love. I did not like that version, which meant it was probably closer to the truth. I went to bed that night without opening any of his old pictures. No fake account, no mutual friend feed, no subtle peek. My chest buzzed like withdrawal, restless and twitchy, sleep coming in broken waves. But underneath all that static was the tiniest thread of something unfamiliar. Not peace, not yet, but the faint outline of a different ending. One where I was more than the cheating villain in their origin story. One where the sentence, "You're the reason we work," stopped sounding like a curse. I did not believe it fully then, but I could feel the ground starting to shift. Maria clicked her pen and asked the question I kept dodging. What do you get out of staying the bad guy in this story? My fingers twisted the tissue into a tight rope between my hands. I don't, I answered way too fast, which proved the opposite. She watched the crushed paper, not my face, like that was talking. You keep describing yourself as unforgivable, like that's permanent, she said. Who does that protect? The word protect stuck, because I had never linked that to self-hate before. It doesn't protect anyone, I snapped, then winced at my own tone. It's just accurate. I cheated on someone, I wrecked him. I could hear Emma in the back of my head, disagreeing and agreeing at once. Maria leaned forward a little, elbows on her knees, eyes steady. Walk me through one thing you don't let yourself remember fully. She always went for specifics when I tried to hide behind labels. My throat tightened because there were a lot of candidates for that. One moment rose up anyway, uninvited, like it had been waiting. After he found everything, he texted me once more, I said. My voice dropped without permission, like the memory still commanded volume. He wrote, "I don't recognize you," and I refused to answer. I had never admitted that part out loud before this minute. Maria nodded once, slow, like she did not want to scare the honesty away. What stopped you from responding? She asked, simple, no sympathy in the wording. I let out a harsh breath and stared at the rug pattern. Answering meant he still knew me enough to hear an explanation. You preferred being a stranger to being someone accountable, she said. It was not a guess, more like math done out loud. That's what I hear under bad guy right now. My shoulders tensed because she hit the exact spot I guarded. Being the monster is easier than being a person who chose badly, I muttered. People forgive humans, they expect change, they expect follow-through. I rubbed my forehead hard, trying to push thoughts back inside. Monsters just get locked out, nothing expected, nothing offered. So when his wife thanked you, that story cracked, Maria said. Her gaze sharpened, connecting threads I had barely let touch. She handed you a version where you did harm and something still grew. Her next line landed like a punch, that's harder to live with. I let out a dry laugh that had zero humor in it. Yeah, being the reason their marriage works is not exactly soothing. I thought of the way Emma's eyes had held gratitude and warning together. It makes me part of their foundation and part of the damage. Maria let the silence stretch just long enough to itch. Where does that leave you now? She asked. Not in relation to them, in relation to yourself. I hated how quickly my brain reached for his name anyway. I'm trying to build something where he isn't the center, I answered. It feels fake most days, like I'm pretending not to check doors. I blinked, surprised by my own phrasing, because I had not realized that image stuck. It's like my nervous system still expects him to walk in furious. She tilted her head, studying me like she had seen that pattern before. Has he tried to contact you since the breakup? No, I replied immediately, pulse jumping anyway at the idea. Any attempts from you toward him? She followed without blinking. Just digital circling, I admitted, heat rushing up my neck. Until last week, when his wife basically confiscated my tracking habits. I told Maria about the unfollows, the settings, the deleted draft. Her mouth tugged upward lightly, not quite a smile, more like approval. That's the first boundary you've respected with him in a long time, she said. Not a boundary he enforced when you chose. The way she worded it made my chest feel both lighter and heavier. I had not seen it as anything that strong until she named it. And now, she continued, you have to decide what to do with that space. I frowned because the word space sounded abstract, even cliché. It doesn't feel like space, I argued, it feels like withdrawal. I pressed my nails into my palm, needing something solid. Withdrawal still means you're stepping away from a source, she replied. In this case, you're stepping away from constantly putting him at the center. She gestured lightly between us. We can work with discomfort, not with obsession. That last word stung, because I had been avoiding it on purpose. You think I was obsessed? I asked, even though I knew the answer. I think you used him as proof of who you were, she said. When he adored you, you were lovable. When he was broken, you were evil. She held my gaze. Either way, you handed him full authority over your identity. I sat back, that sentence landing harder than anything Emma had thrown. I thought guilt meant I was taking responsibility, I muttered. Apparently, I was just outsourcing my entire personality to my worst moment. Hearing it out loud made me wince, like I had insulted myself. Maria scribbled a note, then looked back up. Here's what I want you to try this week, she said. Write 2 timelines, same events, different narrators. I narrowed my eyes, not following yet. What does that even mean? First timeline, she explained, ticking off on her fingers. Tell it the way you've always told it, with you as the cheating disaster. Second timeline, same scenes, but describe what you were afraid of each time. Her voice softened slightly, not excuses, just fear straight on paper. The idea made my stomach flip in a way his photos never had. So I'm supposed to give context without pitying myself. My skepticism came out sharper than I intended. That sounds like a tightrope, and I suck at balance. We'll see, she replied, unfazed, like she had heard that resistance before. If you only write condemnation, we'll talk about why you cling to it. If you only write excuses, we'll talk about that too. She glanced at the clock, then back at me. Either way, you won't be hiding. Session wrapped after that, but my brain stayed in the room. I walked to my car feeling wrung out and weirdly awake. No urge to grab my phone and search his handle right away. That absence felt almost as loud as the cravings used to. On the drive home, a message banner flashed across the screen holder. Unknown number, short text, made it through the evening, he knows I saw you. My hands clenched on the wheel, every nerve suddenly alert. At the next light I checked the full message, heart pounding. It was from Emma, of course, because who else would poke that nerve? We argued a bit, nothing dramatic. I told him it was unexpected. He asked if you seemed okay. The words blurred for a second because that was not what I expected. I pulled into a side street and parked because there was no way I could keep driving. Another text arrived before I could respond. I didn't share details, just that you looked like you were trying to move on. He said he hopes that's true. I stared at that line until my eyes burned again. He hopes that's true. Not tell her to stay away, not why would you even talk to her. A wish not for us, for me to stop dragging chains. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard, then I typed. Did he sound angry? The three dots appeared, vanished, reappeared like she weighed every syllable. Final answer came through, no, just done. Done, the word should have gutted me the way it did years ago. This time it hit differently, slower, deeper, more grounded. Not a slammed door, more like someone turning off a light in a room already empty. I felt something loosen in my chest that I did not know I was gripping. I typed again, careful, aware that any sentence could tilt wrong. Thank you for telling me. Another pause, then her reply, don't make me regret it. It landed like a friendly threat, and honestly I needed that edge. When I got back to my place, I did not reach for old roots. No fake profiles, no digging for fresh photos, no refreshing mutual feeds. Instead, I pulled out a notebook like Maria asked and opened to a clean page. I wrote at the top, version 1, I ruin everything. The words spilled easily, I knew that script by heart already. Every line had me as the reckless traitor who deserved exile. I filled page after page until my hand cramped and my jaw ached. It felt like transcribing a trial I had watched on repeat. Then I flipped to a new page and stared for a long time. Version 2, what I was terrified of, I finally wrote slow. Word. My pen hovered because this felt almost illegal, like sneaking kindness in. I forced myself to write anyway, one scene at a time. Fear of being abandoned first. Fear of being ordinary. Fear of being truly seen and then rejected anyway. Fear that if someone knew every insecure thought, they would walk out laughing. I did not excuse a single action, I made sure of that. I wrote, I lied here, and beside it, I was scared he'd see how needy I felt. I wrote, I cheated here, and beside it, I believed I was unfixable, so why try? It was ugly and it was mine, and it was the first honest double exposure. By the time I finished, my chest hurt like I had run uphill. I reread both versions and saw the same person in each. Not a demon in one and an angel in the other. Just a messy human making cowardly choices for reasons that actually made sense. That night I lay in bed and waited for the usual urge. The craving to reach for my phone and peek at his world. Instead, my hand found the notebook on the nightstand and pulled it closer. I fell asleep with it under my palm like a different kind of tether. You want to know the strange part? Running into his wife in a grocery aisle was not the worst day. The worst one was still the moment he walked out back then. But the first day I chose not to write to him might be the most important. I still wake up some mornings with his name right behind my teeth. I still think of the word done and flinch, then breathe. The difference now is that I see where my choices start and end. He is no longer the judge, jury, and entire script supervisor of my life. So yes, technically, his wife thanked me for being a cheating bleep. For breaking him so hard, he rebuilt himself into her match. I can live with that now because I finally stopped treating it like my whole identity. It's just one brutal chapter in a longer timeline I am finally willing to write myself.